I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth. Jim Crow Joe's ballyhooed infrastructure plan has passed both houses of Congress, but Biden's not going to be signing it for at least another week. Reason why? He wants to make sure that he has these congressional cronies there for the photo op. That's what's really important here, making sure it raises his political stock, and he's got a hell of a long way to go. By the way, some of you seem to think that the infrastructure bill is already law and that money has already gone out, but it hasn't. And it's not going to for a long while, even if he signed it into law today. I posted on Twitter how Newark, New Jersey has been busy replacing lead water pipes, and they've been busy at that for a while now. All of this without Biden's infrastructure bill, by the way. For the people who think that Biden's infrastructure bill has something to do with it, they haven't gotten one thin dime from it. You can't get anything from a law that hasn't passed yet. There's also been some planted stories falsely claiming that black people are going to get a piece of the pie, but when you actually read the story, it's always the same old game. It's just a proposal, and they can't give any real details. TVA gave a brilliant breakdown of this last Sunday, and if you haven't heard it, you need to. It's mandatory listening as far as I'm concerned. When it comes to money for black folks, there's always a trick bag attached. Now, for these other groups, no matter how much money they get, they always demand more, and it's never a problem. No one ever sits around trying to tally up how much they've gotten or claim that it's too much. That certainly wasn't the case for those Asian businesses saying that they need money because of the pandemic. On the other hand, if a young black man is signed to the NBA, there's not a single taxpayer dollar that comes out of that. But you can bet the white media and certain white interests are going to be casting aspersions on him, saying it's too much money for someone that young, a criticism that they never level at white kids who get a lot of money, even though a disproportionate number of them wind up committing suicide. It's not the boys from the hood they need to be worried about. It's the kids from the suburbs. They're the ones who wind up destroying themselves. But white supremacy can't perpetuate itself if it teaches those classified as white to rein themselves in. It's about excess. It has to be. Supremacy knows no bounds. It's ultimately pervasive. It doesn't respect anyone else's rules. It is violating by its very nature because it must be. There's no sanctuary from it and no way to check or restrain it. And so excess is of a necessity a must of the dominant society's culture. And repressing and trapping and containing the oppressed, that's also an absolute necessity of white power. After all, power cannot be power if everyone else can do the same thing. From what we hear, apparently there's going to be some sort of spending bill that the Democrats are going to attempt to put together. And of course, what they're going to be claiming is that, well, black people are included in it because it's going to be fixing roads, and, well, black people use roads like everyone else. That's going to help black people. But what goes unsaid, of course, is the roads that are going to be fixed are not going to be in the places where black people live. So as a black person, the only way you're going to get any of the benefit of that infrastructure money is if you get outside of the places where you live. Now, the flunkies and fools on MSNBC and CNN and your old, dead, decrepit black media, they're not going to tell you this, but Biden's approval rating now sits at 36%. Bad as that is, Kamala Harris's approval rating is even lower. Hers now sits at a pathetic 28%. Only the U.S. Congress is lower at 12%. You know, up until now, Dick Cheney had been the most unpopular vice president in U.S. history. His lowest approval rating, however, was 30%, and he didn't get to that crushing low until the final year of the catastrophic Bush regime. It took old tricky Dick Cheney 7 years to finally whittle his support down to 30%. Kamala Harris managed to beat that in only her first 11 months in office. She hasn't even been in office a complete calendar year. So in only 11 months, she managed to outdo what took Dick Cheney 7 years to do. That's got to be a record somewhere. Now, as Kamala sees it, and her boosters, she's caught on the horns of a dilemma. All of that favorable white media coverage has not changed the fact that she's still about as popular as Jock Itch. She tries to hide from the public, and she becomes invisible because you can't run for president in 2024 if nobody has seen you for 4 years. So she's tried to keep her public appearances to a minimum. If she has to be seen, well, she needs to make sure she's not seen very much, but even that's failed. It seems that every interview or every meeting that she has, she inevitably puts her foot in her mouth. Well, I suppose that after so many years of being down low Willie Brown's plaything, putting body parts in her mouth is pretty much the only marketable skill that she's got. What Joe Biden and, more importantly, Kamala Harris are figuring out the hard way is that you're not going to ski-wee your way past the black vote. Biden made her his running mate, and that was the only way she was ever going to get on the presidential ticket. But we all know that if anyone other than Donald Trump had been president, Biden and Harris would have crashed and burned worse than Mondale and Ferraro. Look it up. Artificially elevating Kamala Harris to the White House didn't fix her real problem, that this woman couldn't get elected dog catcher without the California political machine there to hand her political office. The black grassroots has already flexed its muscles. We cut off Mike Bloomberg's cojones and sent him limping back to New York, and it didn't take us months to do it, or hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign ads. We weren't like the Lincoln Project being backed up by big white money. The black vote broke Michael Bloomberg in a single day. And all of his billions of dollars and his white media connections and his black flunkies he had on the payroll were useless to him. Think about that. We crushed a billionaire. He was a billionaire with no power because we took his power from him. And we didn't need billions of dollars to do it. Mike Bloomberg was taught a hard lesson about the nature of true power last year. His billions of dollars could get him media buys, and they could get him TV spots, and they could get him a few bootlicking Uncle Toms to show up at his campaign rallies. But billions of dollars cannot buy you legitimacy, especially not when the people are hit with a scam and they're against you. That's what Bloomberg learned. He slithered back to whatever Fifth Avenue hole he lives in, and he hasn't been seen or heard from since. Talking around our interest is political suicide. The white media can tell lies on your behalf that they have the black votes and black support in your pocket, but if the grassroots knows differently, that means nothing. Trump's anti-black racism is what brought out the black vote in 2020. I'm sure it wasn't having Kamala Harris on the ticket. Her free-falling approval numbers bear that out. So much for her secret weapon, i.e. her sorority ties. Now, can Kamala and Biden turn this around? Sure, but that's going to require them to cut the check, and it won't be a small one, and it ain't going to be for everyone either. The black vote is for sale to the highest bidder, and so far these two chuckleheads haven't been putting in any bids. And so we're making it clear they won't get our support. And this is no small thing. When your approval rating falls this low, it becomes a slog to try to get those numbers back where they need to be. It will take more than 1 quarter of good job growth, or even a year of good job numbers, for Kamala to get back over 50%. After all, she's not the face of the administration. Whatever goes right, none of that's going to accrue to her. She's not seen as charismatic or particularly bright. And with Biden's senility kicking into high gear, nobody looks at Kamala as being some sort of stabilizing influence. The Biden administration looks exactly like what it is. A doddering old fool and his free-range thought, hoping to bluff their way past the voters one more time. Personally, I don't see how they can undo the damage they've done to themselves. Biden made a lot of promises last year, and then as soon as he took the oath of office, he promptly turned around and broke them all. And worse than that, he made a show out of his utter contempt for the very Negroes who were stupid enough to vote for him. Biden showed his entire whole wrinkled up behind. And the black folks who were dumb enough to vote for him, many of them are increasingly coming not to trust him. They're finally coming around. Michael Eric Dyson was on Bill Maher's sideshow, and even he had to admit that the Democrat strategy of trying to make every Republican out to be a Trump acolyte simply isn't working. And that was the only plan the Democrats had, because the entire goal is we're not going to actually hand black people any tangibles. We're not promising them any tangibles. We're not going to do a damn thing for them. Yeah, Biden said he would, but we lied. That's what's happened. Scaring the souls to the polls, that's failed. And they haven't even completed their first year in office. They got a long way to go before the humiliation of 2024 comes around. So no, they will not bluff their way past us again with any fear-mongering tactics. They're going to have to put something on the table for us. They got 3 years to cut that check. Because if they think that being scared of any right-wing zealots is going to scare black folks, they got another thing coming. Right-wing oppression feels no different and no better than left-wing oppression. The only difference is at least the right-wing nuts are honest about it. They don't make a pretense of any false sympathy. And the other group of people who are learning how much power they don't have is the black bootleg class. The Joy Reids and the Kareem Stud Pierres and the Simone Mammy Sanders and the Roly-Poly Martins and the rest of the fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools. Oh, these guys, as far as they were concerned, if the white media gave them a show, gave them a weekend show, gave them a column, Jonathan putting on his cape heart, he thought that he was leading folks around by the nose, and it just didn't work. They're finding out that they're irrelevant. They're wondering how long before their white paymasters decide, okay, we've had enough of throwing good money after bad. The apparatuses and the would-be organizations that white media was trying to prop up for the sake of dictating our opinion to us and deranging our internal politics and trying to tell us what we're going to think, what we're going to believe, it ain't working. Nobody listens to the griot. Nobody cares about the root. Hell, you had Tiffany Cross-Eyes over there on MSNBC trying to big up the root. Apparently, the Roots put together some list of what they're calling the 100 most influential African Americans in 2020. And I'm sitting here going, oh, this is going to be good for a laugh. You look at who the hell their list is, and, well, basically, they got a few athletes, LeBron James, Colin Kaepernick. But, of course, they got to also sprinkle in some other completely irrelevant morons. Mark Lamont Schill, of all people. God knows how freaking influential he is. Oh, the sun rises and falls with him. Everybody knows all he's got to do is say a few words, and the earth moves, right? So in between NBA players and in between people like Issa Rae, I mean, we're talking about people here that basically either it's somebody who's out there on the court, and these guys were not relevant in any way until they actually decided to do something. Other than that, the only thing that they were influential in was selling shoes or selling some team jerseys on the website. But then you see what's really happening here. They start putting other folks' names on there, people you've never even heard of, activists and podcasters, directors of trans, this, that, or that. In other words, it becomes nothing more than a little platform for them to say, hey, here's some LGBT activists who we're going to say are really influential. Sure, nobody's heard of them. You could put an APB out on them and nobody would respond. But we say that they're influential and that makes them so. Of course, you also have the normal group of immigrants, many of them who work in media. So this is supposed to be the most influential African Americans. This is supposed to be their list. I'm sitting here going, man, you can practically hear the binary digits of zeros and ones from the emails that their white paymaster sent them saying, oh, be sure to put this person on a pedestal. I mean, we got to make sure that we list Simone Mamie Sanders as being influential. Influential with who? From her basement in the White House. How the hell does that work? And to give you what I think is the best example of how this list is just a fraud, you want to know who number 22 is on their list of the 100 most influential African Americans? Tiffany Cross. Well, I guess that explains why she was so interested in having the Root on her show so they could talk about the 100 most influential African Americans. By the way, you want to know who number 43 on their list was? Zerlina Maxwell. She's got a show on MSNBC too, by the way. Gee, I can't understand why the woman who was talking to Tiffany Cross, that editor for The Root, I can't imagine why she didn't just say, you know what? I am one of the 100 most influential African Americans. Hell, with a lineup this stupid, she might as well have put herself on the list, and then this portrait of perfect idiocy would be complete. They actually put Chadwick Boseman on their list of most influential African Americans for 2021. He died in 2020. He died over a year ago. And yet they're putting him in there and saying he's one of the most influential black folks in 2021. This is the kind of list that they put together. But to me, that's not funny at all. To put Chadwick Boseman on this list, that's clout chasing. That's somebody who's trying to get clicks, trying to get hits. They're hoping that this will show up in the metadata. And whenever they put together their little list of 100 most influential African Americans, they make sure that there's more black women listed than black men. And of course, black women are going to be at the top of the list. Because for the editors over there at The Root, like at the Griot, this is a vanity project. This is not to be taken seriously. This is them psychologically masturbating. As long as NBC or whoever the hell is pretending to pay the bills over there is still letting these guys come to the office and goof off, they're just going to keep playing with this thing as their little toy and acting as if they're putting in some work and doing something. That's what all that this is. And if you think that this list of losers happens to be something, you should have seen what they were doing last year. One of the folks that they said was one of the most influential black folks of 2020 was Jaime Harrison, of all people. Jaime Harrison. This is the idiot who nigga Jim Clyburn was getting all ventilated about last year. Y'all cost him that congressional seat. We lost a seat because of y'all. Stop sloganizing. Stop sloganizing. Sloganizing kills. It's killing my political hopes. Y'all ain't gonna get invited to the November fish fry if y'all keep this up. This is who the root, or as I like to call them, the weed, has listed. Jaime Harrison. His only accomplishment is getting beaten in a political race with Lindsey Graham. What kind of influence does a man have when he loses a race, especially to somebody like Lindsey Graham, who he should have beaten? He outspent Lindsey Graham, fundraised the guy. He should have won, and yet he lost. What kind of influence is that? How are you one of the most 100 influential people in America? I'm sure that this is all just one big coincidence. See, this stuff would be funny if it wasn't for the fact that these guys are actually doing this mess. So this is who the old dead black media wants to try to prop up the lie, who speaks for you and me and who's influential, who it is. Influential meaning that this is who black folks follow. So it's the old model of they follow athletes and singers and some butt-kissing, butt-dancing bootlicks that you see on this or that cable show or on PBS. That's their job, to present black people's interest and to present the black community to the world as a joke. Black people are not to be taken seriously. Our politics are not serious. It's the politics of the playground or the plantation, but it's certainly not anything serious. Black folks don't have any serious interest because black people don't think about anything seriously. You can just joke and kid with them. You can send a class clown out there to be the representative or talk to them. They don't know any better. And this is supposed to be your black media, the old dead black media. This is what they're still at this late date trying to push that old canard at this late date. When you look at this collection of nobodies, goofballs, and irrelevant wackos, they shouldn't call it the top 100. They should just be honest and call it the bottom 100, because that's what this is. I mean, you got just a gallery of rogues in here. The Issa Raes, the Brittany Griners, the Mark Lamont Shills. I mean, it's just pathetic. This shows that you have the old dead black media. These guys are circling the toilet bowl. These guys are starting to drift away into oblivion. They're crumbling and falling before us. This is just going to be a great little show. We can sit back with some popcorn and watch as these guys howl and scream and try to get attention for themselves. All the while we get to point and say, hey, look at these idiots. They're trying to tell themselves they got all of this influence and they're desperately hoping that somebody will be fooled. But we're not. And contrary to what they want to believe, the black grassroots has the power to make sure that we can deny them all of this would-be power and influence that they want to pretend that they have. The black grassroots has already flexed his muscles and proven that we can do something to them far worse than merely ridicule them. They think that all of this lampooning them and holding them up to be humiliated, they think that that's the worst we can do to them. We can do something to them far worse than that. We can ignore them. Good day and be one. Black media exists because of you.